everybody, Shay here. Today I'm sitting down with professional bookkeeper Stacy Birley with Coeur Accounting to talk about something every business owner needs to stay on top of, 1099s. If you hire contractors, pay vendors, or run pretty much any kind of small business, this is information you cannot afford to miss. We're going to break down what 1099s are, who needs them, why they matter, and the biggest mistakes that business owners make that can lead to IRS penalties. My goal is to help you stay compliant, stay organized, and feel more confident heading into tax season, and to show you why having a good bookkeeper in your corner makes all the difference. So let's dive in. Stacy, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to have a conversation with you about 1099s. Do you want to take a second just to introduce yourself so people know who you are and what you do?
Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you. I am Stacy Birley. I'm co-owner of Coeur LLC, where we provide bookkeeping and accounting services for businesses. So anyone that owns a business, we help them manage their books and keep them financially ready to know what's going to happen next.
Nice. Well, thank you again for chatting today. We want to make this quick and informative for people. If you're a small business owner joining us today, you probably already know what 1099s are, but let's just start with the very basic info of what a 1099 is and who needs to be thinking about filing them.
Right. Okay. So any business that hires vendors needs to consider whether or not they have 1099 eligible vendors. And 1099 eligible vendors are anyone that provide a service to your business. And that service can be a combination of just service, but it can be a combination of service and parts and labor. So my prime example is if you hire a plumber to come in and fix plumbing in your business, they will need to receive likely will need to receive a 1099, even though they will be providing parts when they make that repair. They're also providing a service. So they are likely 1099 eligible. What delineates a lot of vendors as to whether or not they're going to receive a 1099 is if they're an S Corp or a C Corp. And that's pretty much the only time that they don't, or if you pay them under $600. But my rule of thumb is to always collect a W-9 before you pay a vendor because you never know when you're going to go over that $600 limit.
That was going to be my next question is how do you gather that information from the company? Because sometimes that can be a little bit of an uncomfortable question, but there's the W-9 form that you provide to them, and then it's their responsibility to complete that and provide their tax information back to you. So in some situations,
Correct.
if it's a sole proprietor, they might possibly be providing their social security number. So you do need to be careful with that paperwork and keep it secure. But in most instances, it's probably an EIN number that they're going to give you. And then that's the information that you'll use as the business owner to issue the 1099. So
Correct.
we
It
talked
is.
about the threshold of $600 for 2025, but I believe it's going up for 2026. Have you read that?
I haven't read that yet because so many of those rules they throw them out there and then they're like, oh, we're going to put a pause on that. We're not actually going to do that yet. So I'm waiting for the actual affirmative that yes, the limit's going up.
Yeah,
So
so for now, count on it being 600, but I'm hopeful that they're going to raise it because it is kind of an inconvenience for small business owners to have to file these forms, especially for such a small amount of income. So it potentially could go up to $2,000 for next year. But like Stacy said,
correct.
if you think that you're pretty much anyone that you're going to be paying, if there's possibility of needing to file the 1099, just collect the W-9 before you even pay them. Because then you're not trying to have that uncomfortable conversation at tax time when you're up against deadlines. So that's kind of a good
Right.
transition into talking about when are these forms due and what happens if you don't file them.
Right, right. So, yeah, 1099 forms have to be postmarked by January 31st, the same way W-2 would, because in a lot of situations, this is basically the vendor's replacement for a W-2 in their business, right? This tells them what income they received from you. And so it has to be postmarked by January 31st. And if you don't, issue 1099s where you're supposed to, you are liable for some pretty hefty IRS penalties for not. It depends on if the IRS determines you wantingly not filing a 1099 or you accidentally didn't file a 1099. There's big differences. It could be from a $50 didn't issue a 1099 to a $500 per 1099 that you didn't file or issue. So there's a big spread of filing penalty fees.
And kind of the point of, I mean, the reason that the IRS wants us to file those is because if we're going to take the deduction for money that we paid to someone, they want to be able to ensure that that money is being claimed by that other person. So it's kind of a check and balance. And another reason why it's important when you receive 1099s that you report that income accurately, because if not, you will most likely get a letter from the IRS saying, hey, we have record of this income here that we don't see on your tax return. So
Exactly.
area of confusion that I run into a lot of times with my individual clients is thinking that if you don't get a 1099, you don't have to claim the income. And that's also inaccurate. The IRS wants you to claim any income that you receive. But if you do receive under 600, it's not required to be reported. So the IRS won't know about it. So if you don't claim
Right.
it, you might not get caught, but you do technically have to claim all income, whether the 1099 was issued or not. So I always like to point that
Yes,
out to people just so they're aware.
exactly.
They can do with
Yeah,
that information, but
I
just
agree.
awareness.
And I just wanted to mention one thing about collecting the W-9s real quick, and in that it can be a really painless process if you just put it into your vendor onboarding process. It's just a natural thing. You're hiring this new vendor. These are the things I need to know. A lot of times when you bring on a new vendor, you not only want the W-9, but you also want proof of insurance or a bond or whatever it is that's required when you're bringing on that particular vendor. So it can just be a matter of this is the paperwork that needs to be completed before we hire you as a vendor. Um, and unfortunately, not paying them is the only leverage you have for getting that W-9 because ultimately the responsibility of having a W-9 on file and issuing the 1099 is the payer's responsibility. And they bear the brunt of all of the backlash from the IRS if those things aren't collected.
Mhm. That's a great point. There is a box on your tax return that you have to check that says you filed your 1099. So if you didn't, you have to tell the IRS that and they're gonna know, or you have to be dishonest on the tax return, which I don't recommend.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
really important that you do that. And potentially, if you were audited and hadn't issued the 1099s, they could disallow that deduction for your business. And then you're having to pay tax on income that you didn't actually get to keep. So,
Right. And that can be IRS audit can be pretty ugly. I've assisted two clients many years ago through IRS audits, and both times the first thing that the IRS agent asked for was a copy of all the W-9s you had on file, a copy of the 1099s you issued, and a list of all of your vendors and all the expenses by vendor. That was the first place they looked and
okay.
to double check that the 1099s were issued. And the ones that weren't, they turned it into income for that client. And that client was responsible for the tax.
Yep, it's definitely important. And I've been
Yeah.
promoting for using professional bookkeepers all year. I think that using a professional is the very best way to get this done. And Stacy's here, and I have lots of other great bookkeeping referral partners. If you're a business owner and
Yes.
looking for help in this area, but if clients are maybe not set up with a bookkeeper yet and just now learning this information and knowing that they need to do them in January, do you have any recommendations of anywhere that is it possible for them to file them on their own? And how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, they can file it on their own. The IRS actually has put together an online website. It's actually it's a little confusing. It's the IRS website that's e-file information returns with IRIS. And that's, the you apply for a TCC number, and then you can go in and you can file your 1099s free directly with them. You do then need to print them and mail them to the recipients, your vendors. But yeah, you can do it on your own. I just highly recommend being very clear and knowledgeable about your expenses by vendor and making sure you're taken into consideration all of your expenses and how they've been allocated.
Mhm. Yeah, and if you have a good bookkeeping system in place throughout the year,
Yeah,
there's easy reports that can be pulled and it can be a pretty seamless process. So
exactly. Exactly.
awesome. Well, is there anything else on top of mind that you think clients should know regarding 1099s and filing requirements?
Um, do some research. If you're going to do it on your own, do some research so that you really understand the difference between the 1099 miscellaneous versus the 1099 NEC versus a 1099 interest return. Those are the top three that most small businesses need to recognize and understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know this is kind of geared towards small business owners, but I do want to mention one thing since I deal with a lot of clients who have rental property. If you're just an individual who owns some short or long-term rentals and you have to hire contractors to do work on your rentals, you are also subject to that 1099 reporting requirement. So keep that in mind if you pay someone over $600 to come, do some plumbing repairs or other type of work on your rental properties, then you would also need to file those 1099s.
Yes, very
Yeah,
much.
and a great bookkeeper like Stacy can help you out with that information. I'll try to post her contact information in the comments here, wherever you found this video. And I'm always here to help and give introductions to people if you need help with any part of running your business. I love to be a resource, and obviously if you need tax help, I'm here to help. And I just want to thank you so much, Stacy, for joining me today. I love passing on helpful information to my clients, and I really appreciate your time and expertise.
Thank you so much, Shay. It was wonderful. I appreciate your time too. Have a
Yeah,
great day.
you too.